Greetings, Iain from RTL here. Welcome to another Skinner McCook production on a Saturday. My ears are ringing. I went to an AC/DC tribute last night, so my ears are a bit ringing. So if I shout, I do apologise. Old age, eh? Anyway, today we're going to tackle the number one albums from the 1990s. And we just said that, there's some good stuff and there's some... So this could be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to this, though. Right, usual thing. Richard will go first. I'll go second. Then we'll do the bubbling unders. So when you're ready, Richard.
Okay, right. Well, as I said to you before this, I'm not a big fan of the 90s, to be honest with you. I thought the 80s and the 70s, the quality was much higher. But these are 10 really good albums, and the top 3, 4 are excellent. And my number 10 is from 1991. It got to number 1 for 1 week only, and it's REM's Out of Time. Now, I was actually surprised to find out that Automatic for the People didn't even get to number 1, and that's regarded as their finest. Although I do prefer Out of Time. I love the track Losing My Religion. I hated the track Shiny Happy People, but I actually quite like it now. It's growing on me. But my favourite track off this is a song called Me and Honey, which also uses Kate Pearson from the B-52s and backing vocals. There's a beautiful track. It's almost a spoken track, but the harmonies on the song Belong are brilliant. Near Wild Heaven's a nice little pop song. And I also like the almost instrumental End Game, which I think ends side 1. But overall, it's a really good album, and it's one of my favourites. Not my favourite REM album, it's Green from 1988, but it'll be in my top 3 anyway. So REM Out of Time is my number 10.
Yeah, obviously I did my REM this week, and that was quite high up there. Like you, I'm not a very great fan of Shiny Happy People, but Losing My Religion. I think there's a lot of people, as I said on my show, people forget that there was an REM before Out of Time, and a very good REM.
Yes, I agree. The 1980s REM is very good.
Yeah.
The IRS.
Yeah, good choice. Nothing wrong with that one. Okay, my number 10 is from 1991 as well. 2 weeks at number 1, and it's Queen's Innuendo.
Ah, right. I thought you might have that in there.
Yeah, love Innuendo. The video to that, we've spoken about that before. It's just great. Not my favorite album by Queen by no means, but when you're looking at this decade, it was much better than Made in Heaven. That was just an afterthought. This was still while Freddie was alive. Headlong is great. It's a good racy rocker. The Show Must Go On is a lovely song, and these days, best days, whatever it's called, can't remember. But the song, the last one they put out, beautiful song and very emotional. So you cannot not discredit Innuendo in this list.
I bought that album when it came out. I actually bought it in vinyl. It was one of the last few vinyl albums I bought before I started on CDs. And honestly, I could not get into it, and I still think it's their least album for me. I do prefer Made in Heaven. So I do. I think Innuendo sounds a little bit dated. I love the song Innuendo. I think it's an absolute classic. But the rest, there's a couple of decent songs on there, like Ride the Wild Wind. I always liked, but I can't stand Headlong. I think it's one of Brian May's weakest. But yet again, this is a guy that loves hot space, so you take what you will out of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Queen, and they are one of my favourite bands. So,
but whenever I rank their albums, I think I put it last. Well, second last after.
Can't remember where mine.
Flash Gordon. Okay, my number 9 got to number 1 in 1995 for 1 week only, and it's a Britpop, and it is Pulp and Different Class. Now, this has got one of the best ever singles of the 90s on it, called Common People, which I absolutely love. And I also love Disco 2000. But there's some other really great songs on this, like Pencil Skirt. is a fantastic little number. Misshapes, I believe, is a single as well. Something Changed and Bar Italia. They're all great songs. Now, Jarvis Cocker does get on my nerves a bit, but in saying that, Pulp had two really good albums, this one and the one before, His and Hers. And I think Different Class is a really strong album. So that gets my number 9.
Yeah, I mean, Pulp were a band, they had some really good hits, but it's them deep cut tracks that really were the better tracks. You find that with some of these Brit pop bands, forget the hits, you go and listen to their stuff off the album, you go, wow, these are good.
Yeah, there's another song called Underwear, which I think is really, really good. I forgot to mention it. But overall, the album is excellent. Now, the thing about Pulp is I can listen to one album at a time. I couldn't listen to two Pulp albums in a row because Jarvis Cocker would annoy me, but I really do like Different Class. And I say that's why it's my number 9.
Yeah, good choice. My number 9 is an artist that I got you into.
Mm.
And you went out and brought out an album after watching my retro.
Okay, I know who.
Again from 1991, 1 week, and it's Enya's Shepherd's Moon. This is a lovely album. The big hit off there was Book of Days, which was from the film Far and Away. But some of the other tracks, like Caribbean Blue, such a catchy, lovely tune. The Angelic Marbles, it is angelic. It's one of her best albums, Shepherd Moon. I'm not ranked it yet, so I'm not going to say if it's my favourite, but it's an album I love putting on a Sunday morning. The whole album sets the mood for your day, and that's what I love about that album, and that is why it's my number 9. It's just a wonderful album to listen to.
Oh, excellent choice. Although I don't know the album, I did buy the Double Greatest Hits album on your recommendation. I love it, absolutely love it. And so I must actually check out the actual individual albums. I'm sure they're really good.
Yeah, that's the one I would recommend anyone to start on, is Shepherd's Moon.
Right, my number 8 is from a band I cannot stand. But I love their debut album, and every album just got worse since the debut album. And it was only number 1 for 1 week in 1994. And it's Oasis, Definitely Maybe, which I think is a really good rock and roll album. Although Noel Gallagher is such a plagiarist, if that's the word.
Yeah.
So much from other artists. For example, Cigarettes and Alcohol it's just Get It On by T-Rex rewritten, really. It's exactly the same riff. And one of the other singles is Shaker Maker. And if you listen to it, it's got the same melody as the New Seekers I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing.
Yeah, I'm not, you're not the only one that thinks that.
But there's some really good Rock and Roll Stars, fantastic intro. Supersonic was the first single, which is great. Live Forever, another single, which is great. And then you get songs like Slide Away, Bring It On Down, and then the very quirky Dixie's Dinner. It's an excellent album, and I don't like the second album, Morning Glory, because it's too plagiarized as well. And I don't think the songs are strong as the first. So Oasis Definitely Maybe gets my number 8.
Yeah, they're all right. They're there. A friend of mine, when they played Northampton at the Road Mender, just before that album actually came out, my mate's band supported them, and then they said the Gallaghers walked in like a couple of superstars, and they weren't. Wow. They thought they were a bit above themselves, and they weren't, and they did. They just got worse and worse as time went on. Okay, my number 8 is from one of my favourite guitarists, Mr. Eric Clapton.
Oh, right.
And this is from 1994. And he only got to number 1 for 1 week. And it's a covers album called From the Cradle.
Right.
But it was the first time he'd really sat down since the Yardbirds and actually put a proper blues album together. Okay. It's got some great covers of classic blues songs like Hoochie Coochie Man, and Blues Before the Sunrise, and It Hurts Me. Just great blues. And I mean, I love blues, and Eric Clapton is a fine guitar player. And I wanted to put some Eric Clapton in. There wasn't much that got to number one, but this is one album that did.
Well, I'm not a fan of the blues, so I won't touch it with a barge pole. I don't mind some Eric Clapton, to be honest with you. Some of the 70s stuff is quite good, but his 80s stuff, I think, is very, very dated in sound.
Yeah, a lot of his 80s albums are not particularly good, but in the 90s he did come out with this bluesy, and it sort of put faith back in Eric Clapton for me.
Fair enough. Right, my number 7 is 2 weeks number 1 in 1998. It's The Beautiful South and Quench. Now, this is the one with the big hit single Perfect 10 on it. And then the follow-up single Dumb, which has got a very sort of 50s influence, is very, very good as well. But there's some fantastic songs off this. The Table, which I believe is a single, I'm not sure, is one of my favourites off it. But my all-time favourite song off this, and one of my all-time favourite Beautiful South songs, is called Window Shopping for Blinds, which is absolutely brilliant. There's different little sections in the song, so it's not just your normal verse, chorus, end. But it is really, really good. And other or album tracks like Look What I Found in My Beer is brilliant. Paul Heaton is excellent lyricist, and Jackie Abbott is still in the band at this time. By the way, I'm going to see them in a fortnight's time, Heaton and Abbott, so I'm looking forward to that. And then you get the song that Dave Hemingway sings, and I'm not a big fan of his voice, but The Lure of the Sea is a gorgeous song. So Beautiful South, Quench gets my number 7.
Yeah, good choice. I've got one of theirs in my Bubbling Under. But Paul Heaton, what I like about his style of writing, he writes about everyday, boring things. But he gives it a little sparkle.
Yeah. He's a fantastic entertainer. This will be the 4th time I've seen him live, and he is really, really good.
Yeah, excellent choice. Right, this is where we might go different paths now. My number 7, again from 1991, 1 week, and it's Metallica, or known affectionately as the Black Album. But when you look on there's nothing there that says the Black Album. It's just because of the cover. It was their sort of proper breakthrough of people, but it lost a lot of fans. Oh, they've gone all soft. No, they haven't. They just evolved. Bands evolved. Enter the Sandman. It's a song that if I never hear again, I'm not going to get thing. But I like songs like Sad But True. Wherever I Lay My Hat, I Will Roam. Great songs. It was a punchy album, and it really what we needed in the metal community at the time. It brought faith because the metal was just sort of fizzled out and gone grungy, and then Metallica come out with a punchy rock album, metal album, and everything was restored. So that's why it's my number 7.
Oh, well, I know nothing about Metallica. I think I've heard Master of Puppets once, way back in the day, and that's it. So I can't comment. I don't know anything about it. But I was expecting you to have that on it because I saw Metallica. Oh, Ian's a metalhead, so he'll have it.
You won't think it was my short hair, but yeah, I was a metalhead in my day.
Okay, number 6 then for me is an album that got to number 1 for 2 weeks in 1990. And whenever I bought this on release, I was disappointed because I was expecting the same as his previous album, and it's nothing like it. And it's Paul Simon's The Rhythm of the Saints. Now, I did love the single, The Obvious Child, with all those big crashing Brazilian drums, which I thought was fantastic. But it is a very rhythmic album, and it takes a lot of listening to. 2 of the songs I think are gorgeous is She Moves On, the first song on side 2, absolutely beautiful. And then the second single, Born at the Right Time, even though I'm not too sure if it was a single over here, but it was a single everywhere else in the world, is one of his finest songs of the 80s and 90s. You know, it would have sat beautifully on Graceland, But songs like Proof and Spirit Voices and The Coast are they're really nice to listen to. It's rhythmic, but it's not the same as Graceland. And if you forget about Graceland, you'll appreciate the album more because it's follow up and you think it's going to be more of the same, but it's not. So that gets my number 6.
Yeah, I like that album. I think it's got a lot of it. He's gone back to his sort of folky roots with art. It's, but he's brought it up to date. If you get what I mean, it's a lovely album. It's got some lovely songs on, and it just proves what a great songwriter he was.
Oh, excellent songwriter.
Lovely stuff. Right, my number 6 is one of my favourite bands, Pink Floyd. From 1994, 4 weeks, and it's the Division Bell. Now, I've always preferred this to the previous album with the Dave Gilmour. That was too clinical and poppy. A Momentary Lapse of Reason was. This is a better album, better produced. It's got some lovely songs on. It's got some funky stuff like What Do You Want From Me? Love that great bass line from Guy Pratt, who's a stalwart of Pink Floyd on stage and on these albums. Coming Back to Life is a nice ploddy sort of song. But for me, it's the last track, High Hopes. It's a wonderful track, absolutely dynamite, and it sort of captured the time at that time in their lives, I suppose. It's a great album. I'd play that one more than I do A Momentary Lapse of Reason. That's why
I actually do prefer A Momentary Lapse of Reason, especially for the song Learning to Fly, which I think is one of Pink Floyd's best. It's not a bad album, The Division Bell, but I just think it's a little bit boring at times. I have to be in the mood for it, so I do. And as they say, those last two are almost Dave Gilmour solo albums anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 5 is very critically acclaimed. It got to number 1 for 2 weeks in 1997, and it's Radiohead's OK Computer. Now, whether or not you like Tom York's voice, it gets on my nerves at times. You can't deny that this is a brilliant album. Starting off with Airbag, which is a fantastic opener, going into the brilliant Paranoid Android. Then you get things like Karma Police, which was a single as well, and it's almost got that out-of-tune piano, a little bit like Sexy Sadie on the Beatles' White Album, which I think is really good. No Surprises is another big hit single. But the LP tracks are great as well, like Let Down is so catchy, Lucky is great, even like Exit Music, another great track, and even the spoken one, which is not really a song, called Fitter Happier. I actually really do like it. Radiohead for me are 2 excellent albums, this one and the previous one called The Bends. The rest of it I can forget about. I don't mind Kid A, but I have to be in the mood for it. But OK Computer is a great album, and it's my number 5.
For me, I'm one of these. I've got a greatest hits, and that does me fine.
Does you fine, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been a great fan of Radiohead. I find some of their songs a little bit, but it did a lot of business for them, as I said. So good quality album. Okay, my number 5 is from a Canadian artist that did a 100-degree turn on her music career. Her first 2 albums were poppy, Stockagan and Waterman nonsense. And then she came up with this belter. It's from 1996, 11 weeks at number 1. It's because it was at number 1 for 2 weeks in the June, and then July 8 weeks, and it went 10 times platinum, and it's Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morissette.
All right, okay.
Big hat album. Really, she went from pop to rock, and all of a sudden became this huge artist. Great songs on there, You Ought to Know, and what else? Can't read my writing this morning. Hand Over Head, and then you get this House and a cappella that's a hidden track. Wonderful. Great album. I love that album to death. Play it a lot.
Yeah, it's a good album. I didn't make my list. I actually saw her live about, must be nearly 7 years ago now, in Cork, and she more or less played the whole of that album. But the problem with the concert is she was so far away and they didn't have screens. You could hardly see her. All you could notice was she had short hair, and Alanis Morissette does not have short hair. She's got very long hair.
Yeah.
But it was a really good concert, and yeah, very, very good choice. Okay, my number four then is from 1994 and 1 week, and it's Morrissey's Vauxhall and I. Two singles, The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get, which I love. And the second one, which didn't do too well, Hold On to Your Friends, which I love as well. But the opener, Now My Heart Is Full, is absolutely beautiful. And then he has really funny songs. His lyrics are funny. For example, The Lazy Sunbathers. There's a nuclear war on, and the people sunbathing can't be bothered to get up. They just lie there in the sun. Lifeguard, Sleeping Girl Drowning. That's another one, which is quite funny. But yeah, I think his lyrics are funny, really, really good. And some other excellent songs like Billy Budd, Why Don't You Find Out for Yourself, and Speedway. It's my favorite Morrissey solo album, and it gets my number four.
Yeah, great album. I've listened to it a few times because I'm sort of listening to some Morrissey at the moment. I wonder why. And it is some then. I mean, today I think if we wrote that, you'd have all the snowflakes being absolutely
exactly.
But it's just how he was. He's a great songwriter. So yeah, a great choice. Okay, my number four is from 1993. Again, one of these albums that's kept going up and down the charts, but it finally spent 12 weeks at the top, and it's Bat Out of Hell 2, Meatloaf.
I had an idea you would have that as well.
Yeah, and my favourite song on there is Life is a Lemon, I Want My Money Back.
Yeah.
I think that is a brilliant song. Out of the Frying Pan, which is a Jim Steinman from one of his solo albums.
Yeah,
it's a great version. And I love Objects in the Rearview Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
One song that I don't want to hear again.
I wonder.
Yeah, I won't do anything for love, but I won't do that. I think that had something to do that it was at number one in the charts forever. Yeah. But the rest of the album is great. It was Meatloaf back on form. He'd gone that very lean period with reasonable albums. He gets back with Jim. They sort the differences out, and bang, we're back on course again. It saved Meatloaf's career.
It did, yes. It's not a bad album. I still don't think it's a patch on the first Bat Out of Hell mine, but another one I do like is Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through. But I prefer Jim Steinman's version. I really do.
Yeah.
But Okay, top three then. My number three is number one for 2 weeks in 1995. And if I've already had Oasis, I have to have Blur. Blur. This is The Great Escape, which is the one with Country House on it and other singles like Stereotypes and The Universal. And there's one other one which I have written down and I can't remember. I haven't written down. This The Charmless Man. All fantastic singles, but the LP tracks are really, really good as well. You get Best Days, which is a gorgeous song. Arnold's Same, which is a very Kinksy type song. I think Ken Livingstone's actually on that. Top Man, which is very similar in style to Park Life. And most people will go for Park Life over The Great Escape, but I think The Great Escape's a more consistent album. And Dan Abnormal, catchy as hell, and then Yuko and Hero at the very end. Brilliant. So excellent album for me. It's my number three, and that is Blur, The Great Escape.
Okay, my number three is a band that I shouldn't really like, but for some reason, I love this. And it's the Verve's Urban Hymns, 1997. I just love that. And Bittersweet Symphony is just a phenomenal song. What I shouldn't like it. It's not even in my remit. But this album, all the singles are absolutely brilliant. And
It was a very successful album, really successful.
And why I shouldn't I shouldn't rave about this, but I do. I just love. There's not a bad track on that album.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I don't have it. I bought the album when it came out as well, and I enjoy it. But like The Drugs Don't Work is another great single as well. But yeah, I think Bittersweet Symphony was taken from, was it Andrew Luke Oldham's, something he did with the Stones?
But was it Richard Bancroft? He's a knack. He just turned it into something. You know, he took something and made it even better.
Okay, top two, and these are my two favorite number one albums. And I think possibly my second is actually my favorite, but I'm not going to give it as my favorite. And there's a reason for it. My number two is an album in 1992 for 2 weeks. And it's Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells 2. Now, the reason I'm not giving it to number one is really it's a rewrite of Tubular Bells 1. It's more or less the same. And but I think it's better. And I love the tracks like Sentinel, which would be like similar to the Exorcist theme at the start of Bells 1. The bell is fantastic, really is, especially actually the remix single version. And then you get Tattoo with the bagpipes. Altered State is the sort of heavy bit. And at the end we have Moonshine, which is like a country hoedown instead of sailor's hornpipe. Fantastic album, my number two. I'm
not going to say too much on that. Okay, my number two. I've gone for another live album.
Right, okay.
This one's from Genesis. And it's the Way We Walk, the Longs.
Yeah.
Now, like a lot of people, my pet hates about bands is when they do these medleys on stage. I want to hear the whole song. But that old medley, the beginning of this, it's a 20-minute medley, and it's a proper medley. Yep. Starts off with Dance with a Volcano. I love it how Phil goes, Mr. Rutherford. And you get that lovely bass line in that. Firth, Fifth's in there, they're all in there. But the best tracks on there is a live version of Domino, which is brilliant. The best version. And Fading Lights from We Can't Dance. Absolutely killer version on there. I didn't like the shorts because it was all the hits. That didn't even get to number one in the album charts, the shorts. But the longs did. And I think that's because it's got proper Genesis on, and the old fans like me loved it. And that's why it's my number two.
Good choice. Right, well, time's running out here. My number one, 1999, for 11 weeks, Canadian singer. That's what I thought you were going to say. And it is Shania Twain's Come On Over. I absolutely love it. Do you know that of the 16 tracks, 12 of them were released as singles throughout the world? I think it's really good country pop. She has a new album out, by the way, which I got yesterday. Love it. It's great.
Yes, I like it as well. I've listened to it.
The one that really hit me was the very first single for us, which was You're Still the One, which is a beautiful ballad. Man, I Feel Like a Woman. Brilliant. That don't impress me much. Great, although I don't like the dancey version of it. Don't Be Stupid, another one. Brilliant. Honey, I'm Home. All fantastic songs. Come On Over, When. Love it. Love Shania Twain. And that's my number one.
Yeah, great album. Not saying too much because she's coming up in a Ladies' Day.
Okay.
So, yeah, but the one thing, my love of Mutt Lange, but he did really elevate Shania, and it is a great album. And like you, I don't like the dance version of.
That don't impress me much.
No, it's awful. Okay, my number one is the one that's your number two.
Yeah.
And obviously it's Tubular Bells 2. I love it, but not as much as TB1. And when we do the decades in a couple of weeks' time, this doesn't even get in.
Well, doesn't get it for me either. And
No,
it's one of
but again, Alan Rickman doing the Master of Ceremonies, wonderful. As good as Vivian Stanishaw. Got that voice. Tattoo, I love Tattoo.
Yeah, love it as well.
Just a great album. I played it the other day and I thought, yes, it's the little brother. I prefer Tubular Bells 3 to Tubular Bells 2, if it's in all honesty.
I like the three of them, but 2 is still my favorite.
Yeah, but because of the 90s, there weren't much, and that was the one that automatically went to the top of the list. Right, shall we quickly go through the bubblies, because we've got about 5 minutes.
Okay, right. Do you want me to go first?
You go first, yeah.
Okay, my bubbling unders are mostly older artists, and the Rolling Stones, Voodoo Lounge, 1994 for 1 week. Excellent album, but it's a little bit too long, but it is the best Stones album after Bill Wyman left. David Bowie, Black Tie, White Noise for 1 week in 1993. Bowie not getting in my top 10. Not one of my favorite Bowie albums, but it's still got highlights on it, like the title track, Jump They Say, A Miracle, Good Night, and The Wedding. Still a decent album, but very low down my Bowie list. And also, I'm going to give a shout out to Chris Rea and Auberge in 1991 for 1 week. And the title track is great. Gone Fishing is absolutely gorgeous. Heaven is a really, really good song as well. It's a really decent album. So it gets my third bubbling under.
No, that was one of mine, but I love it for the same reasons. It's a great little album. So I'm going for an album from 1996 and got to number 1 for 1 week, and that's Ash, band from the neck of the woods, 1977. I love Ash. I think they're a great band. I think they're from Downpatrick.
I'm not sure. I know they're.
Yeah, I think they're a down band. It's a great indie rock album. Play that quite a lot. My other one's from 1996 for 1 week. Beautiful South, Louis the Colour.
Yeah, that was one of their other number one.
I love that.
Yeah,
Don't Marry Her, me as well. Yeah. And this is a real surprise. It'll probably shock you. 1999 for 1 week only. And it's the Welshman, Mr. Tom Jones. And the album he did, Reload. I love it.
Yeah, that was a very successful album.
Very successful. It brought a lot of younger people into the world of Tom Jones. And the tracks they do on there and the bands he has and the people is killer. Great. He can sing rock. I mean, that one, Are You Going My Way, with Robbie Williams, is a belter. And Cold Outside, I think they did with Garbage. And was it the Fight Fire with Fire opening track? Again, brilliant.
I've never actually heard it.
It's a brilliant album. So that's why it crept in there. Wouldn't have made the top 10, but it had to have a mention because it's one of my favourite albums from 1999, believe it or not.
Good stuff.
Well,
there we go.
There we go. Yeah, still managed to do it in. Well, next week we're taking a break. There's a good reason. I'm going out Friday night and Saturday night next week, so I'll be in no fit state. But the next time we get together, we'll have another with us.
Yes,
we're going to do with Joe from Joe's Final Universe. We're going to go through Mike Oldfield through the decades, which I'm looking forward to because it's been a toughie. So thank you for watching again, and hopefully this will look a lot better than last week's. And I will remember to put all your album covers on this week.
Thank you.
I don't know how I did that, but I'm only human. So that's all for this week, folks. I'll be back on Monday, normal programs, and we'll be looking at the Frank Marino solo albums. And also classic album is someone we've mentioned today, Lenny Kravitz. and the Are You Going My Way album, which was a killer album in the 90s. Didn't make #1, but it was still a killer album. So it is me say it's goodbye for me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Bye-bye, folks. See you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.